Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1174 for August 9th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
We're with Gallo. There's going to be a lot more collaboration. There's going to be a lot more research and development from their end, hopefully from our end. So my worry is about having to stop the innovation that we just started to get some momentum in. Those fears are totally eliminated now. Gallo's 100% behind all the innovation and product development.
It's been a year of innovation at Four Roses. Master Distiller Brent Elliott and his team have created the oldest Four Roses ever bottled, the distillery's first cask-finished whiskey, and beefed up the strength of the flagship Four Roses with a new 100 proof edition. I'll talk with Brent about these new whiskeys and the spirit of innovation that started under Kirin's ownership and is flourishing following Gallo's acquisition of the distillery earlier this year. That's coming up on WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll also have the week's tasting notes, behind the label, and much more. It's all just ahead on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series. Let's get started with the news. It's brought to you by Dewar's. Diageo CEO Sir Dave Lewis met with investors on Thursday, and while he didn't give any specific numbers, job cuts are coming at the number one drinks producer. Lewis wants to cut more than £1 billion in spending at Diageo and says many positions are being duplicated. Diageo shares rose in London trading following the announcement. That's despite a 2% decline in organic sales growth over the past year, with an 8.4% decline in North America, which accounts for more than a third of Diageo's annual sales. Those layoffs could reach all the way down to the distillery level. The trade union GMB Scotland has accused Diageo of failing to engage with workers over a restructuring plan that could result in 38 job cuts across its Highlands and Islands operations. The distilleries include Cardew, Cragganmore, and Dufton distilleries, along with Port Ellen on Islay. Meanwhile, Diageo's Indian unit is in trouble with food safety regulators. United Spirits has seen some of its most popular Indian whiskies banned from sale for using artificial flavorings instead of aging and proper ingredients. The brands include Royal Challenge and Antiquity Blue whiskies. United Spirits is challenging the order in court. According to Diageo, more than 4.5 million cases of Royal Challenge are sold every year in India. Inbrew's Bagpiper Deluxe whiskey was also hit with a ban on sales. Construction is expected to begin next year on Scotland's newest distillery. Highland Council has approved plans for the Glenachulish distillery near Ballachulish. The £6 million project will bring whiskey distilling back to this region of the Southern Islands. 7 permanent jobs will be created once the distillery opens, including a visitors center and cafe. Campari Group reported a 2.7% increase in organic sales for the first 6 months of 2026. CEO Simon Hunt told analysts Campari is the only publicly listed drinks company with 5 consecutive quarters of organic top-line growth. Hunt confirmed the company's full-year 2026 guidance of 3% organic growth. In other news, Next Century Spirits has acquired Grain & Barrel Spirits, the makers of Chicken Cock and Elvis whiskies. The deal includes Chicken Cock's circa 1856 brand home in Bardstown, Kentucky, and its Louisville tasting room. Chicken Cock's history dates all the way back to 1856. The brand was revived by Grain & Barrel founder Manti Antia in 2012. It joins the Next Century portfolio, which includes Bear Fight whiskey. If you think you pay a lot in taxes for your whiskey, consider the poor folks in Australia. The country's spirit taxes are automatically raised twice each year in line with inflation and now stand at $110.15 Australian per litre of pure alcohol. That's 6 times higher than the U.S. tax rate. The latest $2.16 tax hike is one of the largest outside of the COVID era, and research shows that illicit alcohol now accounts for more than 8% of total Australian alcohol by volume. A third woman is suing Bardstown Bourbon Company for discrimination. Former marketing director Laurel Altman-Dixon filed a lawsuit in Nelson County Circuit Court accusing the distiller of age and sex-based discrimination. Altman-Dixon was fired in 2021 after working on Brad Paisley's American Highway Reserve bourbon brand. According to the lawsuit, CEO Mark Irwin ordered her termination after she tried to sit between Paisley and Irwin during a photo shoot. Irwin told the Lexington Herald-Leader the claims are false. The Bad Spaniels case is the legal battle that just won't go away. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has tossed out the permanent injunction Jack Daniels received from a lower court. That's after the Supreme Court ordered the lower court to reconsider its original ruling. The appeals court ruled that Jack Daniels failed to prove that the poop-themed dog toy was likely to tarnish its famous trademarks. Look for another appeal to the Supreme Court. And if you like Jack Daniels hazmat releases, head down to Lynchburg quickly. There's a new distillery series bottling available exclusively at the White Rabbit Bottle Shop and select Tennessee retailers. It's a batch-proof High Angels Share Tennessee whiskey that spent 8 years resting on the top floor of one of the distillery's Coy Hill warehouses. It came in at 69.2% ABV and will sell for $44.75 a bottle. Glenfiddich is out with its second edition in partnership with the Aston Martin Formula One team. It's a 16-year-old single malt finished in a complex combination of first-fill bourbon barrels, port pipes, Oloroso sherry casks, Fino sherry casks, and wine casks. It'll be available nationwide in the U.S. for around $80 a bottle. The Macallan is wrapping up its Harmony collection with a touch of coconut. Whiskey maker Kirstine Campbell created the whiskeys using a combination of sherry-seasoned American oak and bourbon barrels to bring out the coconut notes in each whiskey. The Harmony collection inspired by fresh coconut is available at whiskey shops, while the Harmony collection inspired by toasted coconut is a travel retail exclusive. Both are priced at $185 each. Isle of Raasay is out with the latest release in its oak species maturation series, which looks at the ways different oak varieties affect texture and flavor in the final whiskey. This edition uses Oloroso sherry casks made from Hungarian oak, with a combination of peated and unpeated spirits being matured separately before being blended together. 8,000 bottles will be available worldwide, including the U.S., where it's priced at $110 a bottle. Lag Distillery is releasing its first-ever single-cask bottling with a partner. Royal Mile Whiskies will put it on sale this Thursday through the RMW website. It's a 5-year-old peated malt matured in a first-fill bourbon cask and bottled at 58.2% ABV. No word yet on pricing. Stranahan's has announced its oldest release ever, an 11-year-old bottled in bond American single malt. It commemorates both America's 250th anniversary and Colorado's 150th. It's available at the distillery in Denver for $159.99 a bottle while supplies last. Suntory has released an Irish-themed version of its AO World Whiskey, which uses whiskeys from Suntory's distilleries around the world. In this case, the base whiskey comes from Kilbeggan and Cooley distilleries in Ireland, with whiskeys from the U.S., Scotland, Canada, and Japan adding depth and complexity. It carries a recommended retail price of $199.99 a bottle. And finally, Japan's Kiyokawa Farm Distillery has released a cask collector's edition whiskey in collaboration with the online retailer Decanta. It's the first Japanese single malt to be matured in an ex-Marsala wine cask. Only 361 bottles were produced, and it carries a price tag of $319.99 through Decanta. You can keep up with the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by Dewar's.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. Tickets are still available for Wednesday night's Log Still Distillery dinner with founder Wally Dant at Bourbon's Bistro in Louisville, Kentucky. Tickets are also available for the next night's Bluegrass Bourbon and History event at the Fraser History Museum in Louisville. Sagamore Spirit Distillery in Baltimore, Maryland has its monthly Whiskey on the Waterfront party this coming Saturday the 15th. And the Brandy Library in New York City has a tasting of Japanese whiskeys on Saturday afternoon as well. Whiskey Week Aberdeen takes place at various venues around Aberdeen, Scotland from August 20th through the 30th. And Moonshine University's next Stave and Thief Society Executive Bourbon Steward course is on the 24th in Louisville. Finally, the Whiskey Exchange hosts a Dingle Distillery Masterclass at its Covent Garden store in London on the 26th. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. It's been a busy year at Four Roses Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. At the beginning of the year, Japan's Kirin Brewing sold the distillery and the Four Roses brand to wine and spirits giant E&J Gallo for more than $700 million. Since then, Four Roses has been on an innovation kick, releasing their first-ever cask-finished bourbon, their oldest bourbon ever with the 21-year-old anthology release, and now a new 100-proof edition of the flagship Four Roses Bourbon. Master Distiller Brent Elliott took some time out of his busy schedule this week to join me on a Zoom call. So this has been a year of innovation for Four Roses. Tell me first of all about the new 100-proof edition.
Okay, so we're pretty excited about that one. That's was kind of born from a lot of feedback, in particular on premise, and that was really the driving force behind it. But I'll tell you, just personally, like me talking to people off premise, just people that enjoy Four Roses bourbon and feel it's underappreciated, even people are excited about it from that perspective because it's a fantastic bourbon. But as you know, a lot of the bourbon folks now are looking for high proof stuff. They're not really going to pay much attention to anything that's under 90 proof, much less right at 80. So I think I'm happy for those folks because I love that product. I always have. And if you look at the 10 recipes, the fact that it has all 10, I mean, it could arguably be the most complex of any of our products. And at 5.5, 6 years of age, it's got a great flavor. You take that up to 100 proof, people just now will actually experience it. They'll try it. More and more people I've already gotten a lot of great feedback, are experiencing it, loving it. They hadn't paid attention to it before. But really the driving force behind us developing that was the on-premise. Four Roses Bourbon always has done very well in cocktails, and bartenders recognize that because of the high rye content. But at 80 proof, I think some bartenders felt that it needed a little more structure, a little more alcohol to be a viable option for just about any cocktail. And so that was really the driving force behind that. And so hopefully we're going to see that doing very well in the well. And again, I think we're going to see a lot of people appreciating it that might have overlooked it before.
And it comes in at a great price point, too. I think $29.99 a bottle.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Great value.
What went into putting it together?
From my perspective, it was probably the most, it was the simplest of any product development. It's really just add less water. It really is that simple. Now, from the packaging and marketing, the team was really busy, on this one from that perspective. But from my perspective, I knew it tasted great 100 proof without even having to try it out in the laboratory and trying to dilute it, at the lab scale. So it was just, changing the specifications for it, just to proof it down to 100 instead of 80. But it's the exact same base barrels. Like when I'm selecting barrels and doing a formula here for Four Roses Bourbon, I don't specify that it's 80 proof or 100 proof. It just goes into the tank, and if they need it for 100 proof bottling, they dilute it accordingly. If it's 80 proof, same thing.
You also released a 21-year-old recently. That's the oldest Four Roses ever.
It is. It's the oldest standalone liquid we've ever released. That was the first release in our new anthology series. And it was it's a 21-year-old OBSF. We just released that just under 2 weeks ago. So super well received. All of our recipes sort of behave differently at different ages. I'm asked all the time, what my favorite recipe is. And I can't really just answer that simply because each one kind of peaks and has its own unique characteristics, at different ages. And that's true of recipes, and, particular batches sometimes have their own arc that they follow. And so this one I was really excited about because it's an OBSF, which is the high rye mash bill with our sort of minty clove-like yeast strain. And honestly, that one a lot of times isn't the one that tends to age the best. Typically the V's and the K's, the ones that are more of like the center mass of the Four Roses flavor profile, tend to age better at those hyper ages. But this particular batch, it kind of didn't follow the rules. It really created some very unique flavors. Some of those base flavors that you get from the mash bill and the yeast strain really integrated and complemented the oak notes. And then with the 21-year-old product, every barrel is going to, those minute differences in the barrel, they, day after day, year after year, after 21 years, they really create their unique fingerprint in each and every barrel. So with a combination of that yeast strain, that extra bit of age, it's like every one of these barrels that we did release is its own journey. They're all so unique, so different. So we're excited about that, and we're excited to continue to do this. We'll be doing this at least for 10 years. It's slated right now to be a 10-year anthology series. So yeah, sort of kicking off a new chapter in what we offer with this one. We're really kind of breaking new ground with this 21-year-old release.
How do you keep it from getting over-oaked?
So oftentimes that happens. And we have batches allocated for special releases like limited editions or one-off single barrels or whatever. And sometimes these barrels don't always get picked to be released. And in the past, a lot of these batches would typically, if they kind of went over the hill and I couldn't find a place to use them, they would just be used in Four Roses Bourbon. But starting about 3-4 years ago, we acquired a lot of stainless steel tanks, like barrel-sized tanks. And some of that liquid that was getting up there, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, instead of just sitting on it until it basically expired in the barrel or went too astringent, too oaky, we started selectively pulling those barrels out and basically suspending their aging by transferring them into stainless. And this was one of those batches. So this batch that we just released was actually distilled at the end of 2002 and put in the barrel at the end of 2002. And we tanked it in early 23. Does that add up? So we pulled it out of the original barrels because they were at their peak. They didn't need any more oak. They were perfect as they were. And we pulled them at that point, transferred them into the stainless steel vessels, and then just sat on them. And turns out this release was perfect. They were 21 years old exactly. And we had, I can't remember the count of them, but even at that age, when I transferred from the wood to the stainless, a lot of those barrels were either super low, some were just absolutely empty, and some were just out of balance, maybe too oaky, too astringent. So it is it's like as you march along, more of those barrels fall off. The possibility of being released as a single barrel, and once you start getting out to that age, more and more barrels and tiers start falling off that aren't suitable to be released. Like for this one, the first tier, second tier, they'd gone too flat, too oaky. The sixth tier were hit or miss, but for the most part, they were a little bit too hot and a little bit too dark, too high in ethanol. But the ones that we chose are right there in the middle, third, fourth, and a couple fifth tier barrels. That for this particular batch, that was a sweet spot where they were still interesting. Certainly a lot of oak, but not in a detrimental way. It wasn't so much oak that it was the whole story. It didn't overpower the interesting flavor profile that each of these barrels has.
Why does putting it in stainless suspend the aging process?
There's just no more interaction with the wood. So if you put them in there, seal them up, there's no exchange with the atmosphere. Nothing volatile is going to continue to evaporate off. Not going to lose any volume, any of those volatile flavors. And again, you're not going to continue to pull more of those extracts from the wood. And that's part of it. 21 years old, that liquid gets so deep into the wood that you're past the charred layer, you're into the deep oak, and you continue year after year to get deeper into that oak and pull out even more of those potentially tannic and bitter flavors.
A lot of folks have been saying that since Gallo took over Four Roses, that the reins have been taken off a little bit in terms of innovation, and you've been allowed to be more creative. Is that the case, or were these planned under Kirin's ownership?
No, these were all actually planned under Kirin going back a few years. And as you know from our history, like we have not really had the luxury of innovating outside our 10 recipes in the past for a few reasons. One was we needed every bit of our distillation capacity and resources just to keep up with the demand. And even then we were having a hard time doing that. But then we expanded the distillery, completed that expansion in 2019. So at that time, we did have a little bit of extra production capacity, but we started taking advantage of that about 2 years ago. Trying new mash bills, new yeast strains, and it was about that time that we also started looking at some of these more fun type innovations, like looking at the back end barrel finishes, that sort of thing. So it was super energizing and exciting to get to do some of that stuff kind of on the side, both from the root fundamental perspective of innovation, like the mash bills, yeast strains, that sort of thing. And it was a lot of fun just to do things on the back end with the finishing. And so that was new to us. Again, like I said, it's last year and a half, 2 years that we've been doing these sort of innovations. So that was one of my primary concerns when Gallo came in, that whether or not they would want to continue down that road of innovation. And I was very happy to learn that not only were they happy with it, but they want to encourage it further. Innovation is a big part of their business. Whether you're talking, any of their RTDs, wine, spirits, whatever they do, they understand and, encourage innovation of products, continuous improvement, trying new things, research and development. Like that's a big part of Gallo. And something that we dabble with here, we don't have a research department, but we have some analytical equipment. And we do some of that when we can to try to better understand why, when we do this in the distillery and it ends up tasting like this, what is it behind the scenes? What are the compounds? What are the reactions or whatever it is that is making this, both so we can try new things, understand the process is better to try new things, or just to recreate what we've done. And now that we're with Gallo, there's going to be a lot more collaboration. There's going to be a lot more research and development from their end, hopefully from our end. So my worries about having to stop the innovation that we just started to get some momentum in, those fears are totally eliminated now. Gallo's 100% behind all the innovation and product development.
It sounds like the Gallo takeover has been a positive one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's no secret that the bourbon market isn't what it was 4 or 5 years ago, and so I can't imagine a better partner or better timing to have Gallo come in and partner with us, or to purchase us in this time. They know the U.S. market. They have the resources, understanding the strategy to help our brand to continue to grow in a time where it's not easy like it was 5, 10 years ago. It's frankly it's a lot more challenging. So the timing couldn't be better. And they're committed to the brand. They love Four Roses. They respect the brand. They respect the history, the tradition, the way we do things. So yeah, it's across the board. It's a win-win situation.
Have you had to cut back on production at all because of the downturn in sales?
No, we have changed our projections, our sales projections to sort of match the market. And as sales projections go, the projections for what we're going to produce is going to change. So we're still working on that, trying to look at what we actually need to produce next year, the following year. So I can tell you it's not going to be as aggressive. The future plans are not going to be as aggressive as they were before, but it's not like we're cutting. We're not going to produce as much as we'd originally planned.
You mentioned that you've been experimenting with new yeast strains. Might we see an 11th or 12th recipe?
Absolutely. I can tell you already we have a pretty healthy amount of batches made with 2 new mash bills that are still bourbon mash bills. Our B mash bill is 35% rye. We've created a lot of batches with all 10 or all 5 yeast strains. With the mash bill, it's 43% rye. So we're kind of raising the ceiling on the spicy side of the recipes. And then on the low end, we've added another mash bill that's 10% rye, which is 10% lower than our E mash bill, which is a 20%. So we're kind of opening up that palette that we use to create all of our different flavors with, or all of our different products. And those are currently they're about 2 years old now. So that's sort of the oldest of our innovative products. But we've been looking at a few other different yeast strains, a couple other different grains, different proportions of grains. So I'm learning really quickly the woes of like starting from scratch. All I've ever known is the 10 recipes, and I know if it smells like this coming off the still, from experience, it's going to taste like this 5, 6, 7 years down the road. But when you're trying out new mash bills, new yeast strains, what comes off the still is totally unique. It's totally different from what I have experience with. So you have to use some imagination to try to figure out how to dial these different parameters in or recipes in to hit a target 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So yeah, we've got quite a few of these in the works. Where everything lands, I don't know. I can certainly speculate that a lot of these, whether they land in like a new small batch, a new SKU altogether on their own, wherever they end up, at least certainly some of them will end up as like single barrel collections or one-off releases, or we might offer them in the private barrel program. So, stay tuned. We'll have a lot of new exciting things to share. And that's sort of anticlimactic. It's like, yeah, we're doing these things, but stick around. You can see what they taste like in 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, but that's what part of the fun of bourbon is waiting for it.
It is, yeah. When you sign on, you have to understand that it's an industry of patience.
You also released a new finished expression, the first finished Four Roses this spring, didn't you?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we've been busy with innovative releases. This one was a 6-year-old OBSK, an excellent batch on its own. We took some of those barrels and did a secondary aging in some Mizunara casks that we procured from Japan. And we released that. That's under the umbrella of the experimental series. And this is something we're going to do a few releases each year out of the gift shop. And sort of the idea behind that is for us to do some things that we've always sort of thrown around here, like experiments, whether it's finishing. Eventually, we'll be releasing some of these, mash bills and yeast strains under the same umbrella. But until some of those are ready, we'll be doing different finishings, different creative expressions that we come up with here, sort of on the back end of aging. And we'll do a few of these each year through the experimental series. And this was the first one. We kicked it off with Mizunara, and I'm really happy with this one. And the feedback's been great. It's a somewhat popular wood to be used for finishing, and understandably so. Like, it really imparts some unique flavors, unique wood spices, and going into this, knowing what Mizunara tastes like and some of the other competitors' expressions I tried, and just knowing the reputation of it. It's kind of a spicy, more unique type wood. I really anticipated that would probably pair very well with like maybe one of the fruitier recipes that we have. But I did lab trials with probably 6 of our 10 recipes, including the O's. I did the O's, Q's, F's. Actually, I guess I probably did all 10 recipes. And oddly enough, the OBSK, which is our high rye mash bill with the spicy yeast strain, that one paired with and complemented the Mizunara, or I should say the Mizunara complemented those flavors the best of all the recipes. So that was sort of trial and error. And of course, you go from lab scale, which is 200 milliliters with a little toasted and charred stick in a bottle, to full scale with these very beautiful, very expensive Mizunara casks. That was still kind of a leap of faith. We weren't 100% sure how that would scale up, and it actually scaled up beautifully. I like, in particular, the Mizunara of like all the lab scale and large scale experiments we did. I thought the Mizunara was better in like full scale production than even in the lab scale trials. So, but we're going to continue to do that with different woods, different types of finishes, different creative, products that we come up with. Like I said, we're going to do, a few of these each year.
What do you have planned for the Bourbon Festival next month?
Apart from being there, which I'm excited about, I think we'll probably be doing some private selection releases. The KBF always, selects a couple barrels, for a private barrel program. So we'll have, barrel releases, of course, an activation on the lawn. Kind of business as usual. I'll see you there. It's always a fun time down there in Bardstown.
Thanks to Brent Elliott of Four Roses for spending some time with us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice, and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Let's begin with the new Four Roses 100 proof. Of course, it's bottled at 50% ABV, and the nose has touches of caramel, oak, sawdust, dried fruits, and honey. The taste is dominated by black pepper, cinnamon, and allspice notes that fade to reveal dried fruits, honey, and vanilla. The finish is nice and long with a touch of apples, and I'm scoring the Four Roses 100 proof a 92. Last time around, I mentioned the Stillman's Sonder American Single Malt from Dancing Goat Distillery in Wisconsin. I received a sample this week. It's a 10-year-old single malt bottled at 48.2% ABV. The nose has touches of caramel candy, butterscotch, dried flowers, and honey. The taste has notes of barley sugar, white pepper, allspice, oak, caramel, butterscotch, and chocolate. And the finish is long and spicy with touches of butterscotch and chocolate. I'm scoring the Stillman's Sonder American Single Malt a 92. Finally, let's look at the new Deanston 17-year-old orange wine cask finish. This is finished in Vino de Naranja wine casks from Spain and is bottled at 53.6% ABV. The nose has touches of orange marmalade, apricots, honey, roasted almonds, and a hint of malt. The taste has notes of blood oranges, peaches, honey, ginger, and nutmeg. The finish is long and warm with orange zest and a hint of oak. I'm scoring the Deanston 17-year-old orange wine cask finish a 93. This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey and the United States of Bourbon, a groundbreaking blend of bourbons from all 50 states. Lost Lantern co-founders Nora Ganley-Roper and Adam Polanski spent more than 5 years visiting distilleries to find bourbons worthy of representing each state. It's one of the most ambitious projects in American whiskey, and in keeping with Lost Lantern's commitment to full transparency, every one of the distilleries is listed on the label. Together, they create a singular portrait of the diversity, innovation, and character defining American whiskey today. Find out more at LostLanternWhiskey.com. Lost Lantern, shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about this week. Got a note from Chris Tatsenko in Australia in the WhiskyCast community app. So we arrived in Hobart, Tasmania last night, ready for the last few days of Tasmanian Whiskey Week. Caught up with friends for a few pours. We will miss you down here, Mark. All the organizers want you to come down next year. Photos of events will follow to make you miss it. Absolutely beautiful blue sky and 10 degrees Celsius, but feels like 5 degrees Celsius. Nice for an extreme southern winter's day. Well, Chris, I know what I missed. I was down there in 2019 for Tasmanian Whiskey Week and would love to get back down there. Had a comment in the app from Noel Harity on last week's episode. During the interview with Sam Filmus on last week's podcast, Sam's dog was quite vocal in the background. Any chance you can interview the dog to get its opinion? No, that was our dog, and when I asked her opinion, Isla had no comment. On a more serious note, after I posted news about Diageo's restructuring plan in the app this week, CDON nailed it on the head with this comment. Drastic Dave at work, letting go of 10 to 15% of their workforce and targeting $1 billion of cost savings through that and other measures. No sell-offs and no acquisitions. Big focus on RTDs and Guinness. Hopefully those affected find something quickly. Diageo CEO Sir Dave Lewis got the nickname Drastic Dave from his days at Tesco when he slashed jobs and made other cuts to turn that retailer around. And Keith Duncan posted this comment as well. Sadly, the bean counters are in charge now, and the drive to provide stakeholder value takes precedence over everything else. Well, the bean counters were always in charge. It's just that some beans are more valuable than others. What's your take? Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also access the app through our website at whiskycast.com, too. We're on all of the major social media platforms at WhiskyCast, and the email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. A lot has happened over the last 1,000 years, and a 1,000-year-old Irish oak tree was there to see it all until Storm Eowyn took the tree down in December of 2023. The tree was located on Preston's estate on Swainstown Farm in County Meath, and Bowen Distillery teamed up with the farm and Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Cooperage in Newbridge, Ireland, to turn a section of the tree into 3 very special casks. A section of the tree was sent to a mill in France for splitting and milling. along with 24 months of air drying before being returned back to Newbridge, where the coopers turned the raw staves and heads into the 3 finished 225-liter barrels. They're being filled with mature whiskey based on one of the secret mash bills uncovered through Boan's Vintage Mash Bills program in conjunction with our good friend Fanon O'Connor. It's the first time in more than a century that Irish oak casks have been coopered by Irish hands on Irish soil. I can't wait to try it. If there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you can find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Please remember to leave a 5-star rating or review for WhiskyCast in your favorite podcast app. That helps other whiskey lovers discover the show. We love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store. Look for us on all of the major social media platforms, or just send us an email. The address is comments@whiskycast.com. WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.